Mr. Speaker, will you call the House back to order?
The House will come to order. A quorum being present, the clerk will read the Journal of Monday, June 6. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move to dispense with a further reading of the Journal of Monday, June 6th, and that the same stand approved.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Morelli.
Yes, sir. I know that we have a number of moving parts again today, and we have a busy schedule. But as always, we'd like to identify a couple of historical notes to give us some perspective, things that have happened on June 7th throughout history. For instance, on this day in 1955, the hit show $64,000 Question debuted. The contestant would choose a category of questioning and answer a question, winning $1 and then doubling it each successive correct answer. The game ended after 17 questions, the possibility of a contestant winning $64,000, the beauty of multiplication. On this day in 1892, Thomas Edison received a series of U.S. patents for, among other things, incandescent electric light. In addition to the light bulb, Mr. Edison held patents for the fluoroscope, the carbon telephone transmitter, and a certain kind of rubber which can be synthesized from the American goldenrod plant. What a genius indeed. And on this day in 1776, Richard Henry Lee first proposed a Declaration of Independence to the Second Continental Congress. A young Thomas Jefferson used Lee's resolution as a framework while he penned the Declaration throughout June of 1776. Something indeed to think about. Let me now, Mr. Speaker, give our schedule for the day. We do have a busy day, as I said, and we will need the members' cooperation to conclude our work. Members have on their desks a main calendar and a debate list. After introductions and housekeeping, and I note a number of introductions, we will begin our work today off the debate list, and we will at some point pick up where we left off yesterday on calendar number 864 on consent, and otherwise we'll work off the calendar throughout the day. Members should be aware the following committees will be meeting off the floor, and this is a much smaller list than past several days, so hopefully we'll be able to work through this. We will require Ways and Means and Rules at some point during the day. I'll continue to consult with colleagues in the minority about conference needs, but with that as a general outline, Mr. Speaker, this would be the appropriate time to go to housekeeping and introductions.
Housekeeping on a motion by Ms. Gunther, page 5, Rules Report 36, Bill number 1020A. Amendments are received and adopted. Mr. Goldfeder, for the purposes of an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And while I reserve my right to do another, I'm a little bit saddened that this may be my last introduction on the floor, and so I appreciate you allowing me to interrupt the proceedings for the purposes of an important introduction. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce everybody to a good friend of mine, Ben Englander, who is here today with Roscoe Vision Systems and the mobile eye technology. Unfortunately, too often we see on the news when pedestrians and bicyclists are hurt because of, unfortunately, a lot of blind spots in buses and garbage trucks and sometimes even in ambulances. And so this company, Roscoe Vision Systems, by the way, which is based in Jamaica, Queens. There's a manufacturing in Jamaica, Queens, 250 local jobs. They produce the technology and these systems that are now being outfitted on, last week announced, 100 MTA buses that will ultimately do a great job to keep the driver safe, but most importantly also protect passengers and pedestrians all across our streets. We were talking this morning how he does a lot of the test driving happens on Jamaica, Archer, around York College, around some of the areas where we know a lot of these fatalities tend to take place. Unfortunately, even last night, I'm saddened to report that there was another fatality by a bus. There are technologies that we can utilize now that will prevent these tragedies in the future. I want to thank Ben and his company for doing everything they can to continue to use whatever resources at our disposal to work with the MTA, to work with state and city governments. This technology is being used across the country. As I mentioned, it's being used on buses, garbage trucks, and other large vehicles that have large blind spots. And even the drivers are appreciative of the ability to get this third eye to see the road that they can't see with the two that they already have. I'm also proud to announce that there is a sample test bus that is on State Street. I encourage everybody to take a look at it because it's so important that we understand what tools can be put in place to keep every one of our constituents safe. So the bus is downstairs. right outside the Capitol. And I want to thank Ben and the company for your amazing, amazing work and for everything that we're doing to keep pedestrians and our families safe.
Certainly, on behalf of Mr. Goldfeder, the Speaker, and all the members, sir, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly. We extend to you the privileges of the floor and hope that your trip here to Albany will be beneficial. Thank you so very much. Ms. Gallick for an introduction.
Very much. I think we all learned when we walked into the LOB today, or maybe before, that it was Animal Advocacy Day. Usually when we walk in, I don't hear barking dogs, but so it was a very special event. And I have a group that is here from Putnam County, Green Chimneys, which I've had an opportunity to go and visit several times. Green Chimneys is a not-for-profit helping young people to maximize their full potential by providing residential, educational, clinical, and recreational services in a safe and supportive environment. It was founded in 1947 and headquartered on a farm and a wildlife center in Brewster, New York. They have great animals there. They have great eggs. They have owls and hawks that were in the paper and dogs for today. And they are a world leader in animal-assisted therapy and educational activity with children with special needs. And their teacher counselor, Jane Kopelman, is here with us today as a certified Westminster judge and a therapy dog training coach and evaluator. And the children that are here today, they don't look like children, they're young people. Hannah Arnold, John Gentilia, Jennifer Britt, Alex Cuevas, William Nolan, Tim Yeager, and they are also accompanied by an Angel on a Leash program. And an Angel on a Leash champions are working with therapy dogs in healthcare facilities, schools, rehabilitation, hospice, extended care, correctional facilities, and crisis intervention. And through advocacy, education, research, and service, the Angel on a Leash promotes the role of the human-canine bond in enhancing human health and quality of life. And the agency is also for Barry, who's Assemblyman Titone's licensed therapy dog, and their director is Deborah Green. And I would ask that you give the privileges of the House to these wonderful organizations.
Certainly. Mr. Semanowitz on the same topic.
So I think unbeknownst to myself, certainly unbeknownst to the Angels on a Leash program, I am actually a client of them, and I am proud to introduce my friend and therapy assist. Well, he gives me therapy, so he's my therapist, Barry Titone, who's sitting in the back with his dad, Matt. Thank you. These long days have been a little more bearable, thanks to Barry's therapy. So if Mr. Speaker, if you would extend Barry the privileges of the floor, I would greatly appreciate it.
Certainly, on behalf of Ms. Gallick, Mr. Semanowitz, the Speaker, and all the members, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly. We extend to you the privileges of the floor. We commend you on the work that you do to provide that help that individuals need as they recover. We thank you for those efforts and encourage you to continue up. And anyone who could put Mr. Semanowitz on a leash, we're for them. Thank you all so very much.
Mr. Rivera for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I first came up here in 1983,
and as a newly elected member of the State Assembly, when I went back home and I opened up my district office, about 20 young ladies stormed into my office and said to me, "What are you going to do for us?" One of them, her name was Elaine Johnson, a tall, outspoken African-American lady. And I said, "I cannot do anything for you because I'm taking inventory. I notice I need a typewriter, and if I get a typewriter, I need a secretary." So Elaine turned to one of the members of the group and said, "Well, we got you a secretary. Her name is Maria Byers. You know Maria, Mr. Speaker. She was a student at Monroe College. I immediately went over to Monroe College to see what the college was like. I couldn't get in because they were located in Morris Avenue, right off of Porter Road, a two-story building, and hundreds of youngsters trying to get in to apply for this college. Today, this college in the Bronx have 7 buildings in the Bronx alone. Today, this college has 20 buildings in New Rochelle, over 7,000 students. But it did not start with this Stephen Jerome. It started back in the turn of the century, the 20th century, when newly, I believe, arrived immigrants came to the West Farm section of the borough of the Bronx. It was by 1932 that Harry Jerome, his father, went to Fordham University, graduated Fordham University. A year later, in 1933, he felt that he needed to give back to the community. And he began what is known today as Monroe College. Mr. Speaker, yesterday we had a very good, healthy debate about dreamers, youngsters hoping to be part of an educational system in order for them to be successful. That part of the Bronx, and I say it was newly arrival, were predominantly Jewish community, Jewish American. A little bit to the north by the Bronx Zoo was Italian Americans. And our first college was built right next to the Bronx Zoo. Today, Stephen Jerome continues the good work that was started by the father. And if you allow me, Mr. Speaker, one additional second, I will make my doctor very proud of me because I will read from my iPhone a couple of notes that I made without the use of my glasses. Stephen Jerome became president of the college in 1966 as an instructor and held a number of positions, becoming president in 1978. He is a member of the College President Council for the Governor's Office on New York State Financial Aid, president of the Association of Proprietary Colleges in New State, a former director of Bronx Chamber of Commerce, a former member of the Board of Trustees of the Dwight Englewood School, and a former commissioner of the Accrediting Commission of the Association of Independent Colleges and Schools. I can go on. Let me share with you the accomplishment under Stephen Jerome. Monroe, these are the accomplishments, ranked most affordable private college in New York State by U.S. News and World Report. Online bachelor's degree program ranked 3rd in New York State by U.S. News and World Report. 350 military veterans currently serve as students in Monroe College. 14,000 students have graduated over the last 5 years. The students are members who have come from 75 different countries in this planet. And I can go on. I can go on, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to end it this way. He didn't end just by being an educator. He was concerned about what the Bronx looked like in those days. But he chose to continue to invest in a new Bronx. Yes, we are one of the 62 counties, and we have a lot that we can show off about. Yankee Stadium, but it don't stop there. Bronx Botanical Garden, it doesn't stop there. The Bronx Zoo doesn't stop there. We are the borough with the most community colleges and universities. He shared the Fordham Road Strip with none other with Fordham University. Fordham University on one end, and him at the other end on the west side of the Bronx. When we felt that we needed to create a business improvement district, he was concerned. How do we do that and not hurt or affect negatively the existing small business people? He became the anchor of the Fordham Road bid. I believe it was the first one that was put together in the Bronx, in the city, and it was under then our former friend and assemblyman, Roberto Ramirez. I was then a member of the city council. It's been a pleasure watching you continue to work day and night and continue to dedicate yourself and continue to make your family name very proud. And all of us very grateful for your contribution. Welcome, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Pachado, on the same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to interrupt the proceedings as well. I want to thank my colleague for that very extensive introduction about the history of the college, so I won't go too much into that. My personal relationship and my professional relationship with President Stephen Jerome has extended far beyond my time in office. I actually had the opportunity to meet him many, many years ago as a staffer for Senator Schumer when he spoke at a graduation. I believe it was 2008, 2009. That was quite an interesting experience. I saw a man who was dedicated to not only the education of the students who come through his doors, but also improving his community. And now, as a member of this legislature that has the privilege of representing Monroe College, one half in the 86 and the other half in the 78, I have worked with Monroe College and with President Jerome on many, many initiatives and worked with many community-based organizations in the Bronx to not only help educate our young people, but also bring them more resources and better understanding about the world around them. I simply wanted to join my voice with my colleagues and with you, Mr. Speaker, in thanking this titan of education and helping ensure that the future of not only the Bronx, but the state of New York is in good hands in young, well-educated, smart, very capable individuals who are prepared to take on the future. So, Mr. Speaker, if you can extend the cordialities of the floor to President Stephen Jerome, I would really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Blake, on the same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to briefly speak about our dear friend and great leader, Dr. Stephen Jerome, the president of Monroe College. First, for a personal note, Monroe College has had much impact on my life in two different aspects. My sister attended the school, and when I was a teenager, one of my main jobs was working across the street at St. James Park and growing up and playing basketball and mentoring the young people that were over there. In 2010, when I was still working in D.C. at the White House, we had 7 places across the country where we were able to select for the Urban Entrepreneurship Summit Series. And the one place that we decided in New York initially to bring it to was to Monroe College because of the work that Dr. Jerome and their team was doing around entrepreneurship, where they've actually continued and sustained those programs in that manner itself. Also, Mr. Speaker, making sure our colleagues are aware of the great success and track record Monroe has had in graduating Black and Latino students. In 2010, there was no school in the state that had a higher number of graduating Black and Latino students, and since then has stayed in the top 3 over those last 6 years. We have many reasons to be proud of what Dr. Jerome has done, what Mark as the EVP and so many others have been there, they are really transforming lives in an impactful way. And just really grateful for how they've been really doing phenomenal things, not just in my life, but for the lives of Black and Latino people throughout the Bronx and across the state. And just want to commend him and their work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, at this time.
Mr. Sepulveda on the same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to interrupt the proceedings. While I don't have, Monroe is not physically in my district, and my colleagues have stolen most of my thunder, especially Mr. Blake with some statistics, I have met with Dr. Jerome for many occasions, spoke about the Bronx, and although the Bronx has many universities, his university is the one that has the greatest outreach into our communities. They do programs with our local schools, and they whet the appetite of many young Black and Latino children in their interest to go into college and get the higher education. I am truly grateful to Monroe College for the great work they've done in the Bronx and in New Rochelle, and I'm truly grateful for the great outreach that they've taken special measures to make sure that our local children, our local high school students go on and get a higher education, if not necessarily at Monroe, but anywhere they want to go, but at least they're there, and they provide programs where the kids go to the campus, and that's one of the ways that I got interested in going to college. So I want to thank you and the great work that Monroe does. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. And I, too, would like to add a couple of comments and give the official welcome to President Jerome. For one, I want to thank him personally for when I needed a second job to make ends meet. He gave me the opportunity to be an adjunct professor at Monroe College. And many of the times, and particularly in conference, when I talked about my experience of being an adjunct professor was because of the experience at Monroe College. And I know that my colleagues have touched on some of the aspects of the impact that it's had in the community in the Bronx, particularly amongst students of color. But there's one thing that I really want to point out to where it really shows President Jerome's heart. I believe it was in 2006 or 7, he had a group of students come up and lobby us, and they talked about their concern. They talked about their concern with having to have remedial courses to be applied against the TAP. And it was really because of their advocacy, particularly to the members of the caucus, that we, in the budget that year, said that up to 6 credits of remedial courses for students wouldn't count against their TAP award. So it's those kind of things where not only was he the president of a college, but he showed that he really cared about the students and their well-being and their ability to afford to go to college. So Steve, on behalf of President Jerome, but the affinity that I have for him, I always call him Steve. He's just a great man, and he's done a lot of good things for people. And a lot of students, they don't just come from the Bronx, but a good number of them do come from the Bronx. So Steve, I want to say to you in front of everyone, thank you for doing all that you did over the years, particularly for young people of color in all of the areas of the state, but particularly in the Bronx. So we congratulate you on your retirement. I know you're still going to be involved with the college, but I'd say your 100% presence will absolutely be missed. I know you're turning it over to a person who I think is qualified to run the college, and your son, who's great in his own right. But I'm happy that we had the resolution for you today, and I'm happy that people can get to learn and meet the person that I've spoken so highly of for all that you did for us in the Bronx. So congratulations to you, Steve. And I also want to mention Donna Garnett and David Conklin as well being here with him. Thank you.
Mr. Lupinacci, for the purposes of an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do rise for the purposes of an introduction. Today, we have the distinct privilege of welcoming a true hero to the New York State Capitol, Police Officer Mark Collins of Suffolk County, who's been a protector of many of our Long Island communities. There's a greater story to be told about this hero as his life changed dramatically during a routine day at work. On March 11th, 2015, Suffolk County Police Officer Mark Collins, Shield 5705, was assigned to the 2nd Precinct Gang Unit. Officer Collins and 2 partners were on patrol in an unmarked vehicle checking known gang locations. At 23:50 hours, they observed the Honda Accord speeding and driving erratically on Jericho Turnpike and Huntington Station. The officers conducted a traffic stop and identified 3 of the 4 occupants as known gang members. During the car stop, a subject who Police Officer Collins was well acquainted with fled on foot and was immediately pursued by Officer Collins. Officer Collins was able to overtake the fleeing suspect and a violent confrontation ensued. Officer Collins deployed his taser, which had no effect on the individual, and then they engaged in hand-to-hand combat, during which time the gang member produced a handgun and fired 4 rounds at point-blank range. Officer Collins was struck twice, once in his neck and once in his hip area. Police Officer Collins was seriously wounded and temporarily lost the use of his right arm and leg. With Police Officer Collins being unable to get to his service weapon or otherwise stop him, and with the suspect's gun out of rounds, the suspect fled. Officer Collins shot and was bleeding and paralyzed. He was still able to call for assistance and help. As other officers arrived, he advised them who had shot him and then instructed them how to best render him aid, because not only is Police Officer Collins a police officer, but he's also a volunteer fire chief over in Nassau County. Officer Collins was airlifted by Suffolk County Police helicopter to Stony Brook University Hospital, where the trauma team was successful in keeping him alive. The suspect was located by a K-9 unit hiding in a shed and placed into custody with 1 hour of the incident. After a period of rehabilitation, Officer Collins returned to work and is currently assigned to the Emergency Services Section. Officer Collins' bravery and fortitude in the face of death allowed a violent felon to be taken off the street. The perpetrator is currently serving 55 years to life in prison. Officer Collins was later awarded the Police Conference of New York Medal of Valor. So, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, I encourage each of you to join me in welcoming Officer Collins to the Assembly Chamber. And he's also accompanied by his wife, Nicole, and Mary, who's shouting right now and excited to be here herself, who is their young baby. And I just want to give them a warm welcome on behalf of the 10th Assembly District, and also say thank you for your continued service to our community and your heroic actions. You're an exemplary officer of the law and a remarkable New Yorker and a true everyday hero. And a little bit later on, we'll be taking up a resolution on his great service. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Lupinacci. Mr. Graff on the same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege to stand in honor of Police Officer Collins' bravery. He is truly an example of all the police officers who selflessly put themselves in harm's way in protecting the people of the state and our country. We must also pause and recognize his wife, Nicole, who symbolizes the many spouses and family members who watch as their loved ones don a uniform, put on a bulletproof vest, strap on a gun, and walk out the door not knowing for certain if their loved one will return home safe. The families are the ones who, when the TV blasts that a cop has been shot, they skip a heartbeat, run to the television, and pray for that phone call saying their loved one is okay. For Nicole, the phone call that came was the cop that was shot was her husband. As the father of a police officer, I will tell you, that is the call I fear every day. Her next thought had to be, God, let him be okay. They described the police department as a family and a giant extended family. Unless you experience this, it can never be explained. Every cop out there within earshot of a TV or radio, whether an active duty member or a retired member, felt the pain of an officer being shot and joined their prayers with Nicole's, that Officer Collins would be okay. I want to thank Officer Collins, his wife Nicole, and his daughter Mary for coming here today. I want to thank him for coming here and demonstrating the dedication, the courage, the strength of character exhibited by the men and women who serve as police officers. May God keep you safe and all our officers safe and their families secure.
Mr. McDonough on the same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to join what my two colleagues have already said and echo exactly the same sentiments. I am very privileged to know that Officer Collins and his family are my constituents. They live in Nassau County, a few blocks from my district office, so I feel protected even when he's off duty. but he is an example of what we see all over the country, and especially in recent years, where the police of this country, the police of this nation, and this state, and on our Long Island, are there to protect each and every one of us at the sacrifices they make and at the risk of their lives. So I salute Officer Collins. I welcome him also, and we'll look forward to you welcoming him into this chamber. and his nice little baby. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome, Mr. McDonough. Mr. Saladino, same subject.
Thank you. I rise to share with my colleagues in commending, welcoming Officer Mark Collins and thanking him for all he has done. He sets the bar for all in law enforcement, and we are so proud and privileged to have him here with his lovely wife, Nicole, and their beautiful baby, Mary. Clearly, it is a difficult job, and we in this House must remember that each and every day. Remember this day and this story, that police officers, the men and women in law enforcement, put their lives, their safety on the line each and every day for the people we represent. We're also joined by the representatives of the law enforcement community and the associations like the Suffolk County Police, the Nassau County Police, the New York City Police, and the New York City Detectives Association, as well as the MTA Police of New York City and many other organizations. These fine people represent all who put their lives in harm's way, and we thank Officer Mark Collins for your bravery and for your commitment to the safety of the people of our great state. God bless you now and forever.
Mr. Palumbo, on the same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Echoing the sentiments of my colleagues, I'll be lean and mean, Officer Collins. It looks like Mary needs a snack. But thank you for all that you do. And as the son of a Suffolk County detective and a former Suffolk County prosecutor who worked with the Suffolk County Police Department, what they do every day is something that we can't reiterate enough. So I just needed to stand up and repeat that again, because it cannot be said enough what they do for us every day, protecting our lives and property. So congratulations, Officer Collins, for being here. And Mr. Speaker, please extend the cordialities on my behalf as well.
Mr. Rea, same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the proud distinction of also representing the 2nd Precinct, where Officer Collins worked. And, quite often we're up here. No one's home minding my house. I'll get an alarm that goes off, and somebody from the 2nd Precinct will go and respond. And they don't know if there's somebody that's broken into my house that's trying to steal something. They don't know what situation they are facing in that particular instance. Fortunately, in those occasions, it's been a false alarm. But knowing that the proud men and women from the 2nd Precinct are there to defend my life and my property is truly, heartfelt. And I thank you and all of the men and women that are in law enforcement. It takes a very special person to put on a bulletproof vest every day and strap on a sidearm to go to work. And I think all too often across this country, we forget that there's a very fine line between order and chaos when it comes to our quality of life. So thank you, Officer Collins, and everybody else that's joined you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rea. Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to flesh out a little bit about what occurred on the day that Officer Collins was shot. He knew the assailant. They had known each other from Officer Collins' law enforcement experience for years. In spite of that, this particular individual decided to shoot at you 4 times. It is fitting and it is right and it is entirely appropriate that we here today honor you and honor what you do. And sincere thanks from all of us. My district doesn't go into Huntington. I am just west of Huntington. But I remember this, and I remember this very well. And I remember when the jury deliberated, and they only deliberated for a couple of hours, you were in the courtroom. And the emotional impact on the jury was such that the foreperson of the jury was in tears at the time of the reading of the verdict. The press reports were that you sat expressionless, and when the press asked you afterwards if you had any comment, you had no comment. That's a tribute to your courage and your professionalism. I think it is wonderful that you are here today with your wife and with your little daughter, because you do this not only for us, but you do this for them. Thank you for your service.
Mr. Murray, same subject.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. You know, listening to the story of what happened, it's a stark reminder of what men and women in uniform go through each and every day. At any call, whether it's a traffic stop, whether it's a call for domestic violence, you never know what you're walking into. But you do so bravely, and you represent yourself and us very well. So this is not the first officer from Suffolk we've had up there this year. It won't be the last that we invite up here to honor because of the amazing job that they do. I want to echo the sentiments of all of us here and all of our colleagues in just saying, God bless you, thank you. Nicole, thank you. Mary, thank you. But thank you for being here, and we are thankful that you are here with us today. God bless you.
Mr. Engelbright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to say words that echo what you've just heard from my colleagues. I had the privilege of serving in the Suffolk legislature for 10 years, and I am so proud to see that patch on your shoulder. I am so gratified that you were able to be put back together at the State University Hospital at Stony Brook, which is in my district. Thank you for putting yourself in harm's way to protect our community. Thank you for your courage and for the extraordinary example of bravery and commitment to all that is right that your service exemplifies. We're proud of you, and we're so very glad that you're here with us today to give us a chance to say thank you.
On behalf of Mr. Lupinacci, Mr. Graff, Mr. McDonough, Mr. Saladino, Mr. Palumbo, Mr. Rea, Mr. Levine, Mr. Murray, Mr. Engelbright. Officer, we welcome you here to the New York State Assembly. We extend to you the privileges of the floor. We are so pleased that you are here with us today, that you have brought your beautiful family, and that you are sharing with us this extraordinary tribute that you so deserve, as well as the other representatives of law enforcement that are there at your side. We suspect they will always be at your side. Thank you so very much, and we will too. Thank you.